Welcome to the Fridays with Larry podcast. I'm Larry Lannan. This podcast is sponsored by Citizens State Bank. Learn more about the business and personal banking options at mycsbin.com/Larry. Or stop by their Fishers branch at the Thomas A. Weaver Municipal Complex. Citizens State Bank, member FDIC, and an equal housing lender. Well, today is Friday, February 7th in 2026, and I would say that most people living around the Fishers area, where I live in Fishers, Indiana, a suburb of Indianapolis, most of us are very happy to see February come to a close and January before it. Been a tough winter here in central Indiana, so let's hope that spring is close after all the difficulty we've had this winter. I want to talk about a couple of items relating to state law that I believe will be important to anyone living in the state of Indiana. The first one I want to talk about is something called Hailey's Law. Now, it was called Hailey's Law because of the tragic death of Hailey Buzzbee, 17-year-old Hamilton Southeastern High School student living here in the Fishers area. Her family had been pushing, in light of her death, a change in the Amber Alert system. And they've called it Hailey's Law for that reason. It was pushed by her family. Now, this legislation has been interesting. It passed both houses of the legislature, the House and the Senate, unanimously. And you so rarely see something like that. And it passed both houses with the same language, meaning there's no conference committee, nothing like that. It was smooth sailing through the General Assembly. The only concern I heard was from Speaker Todd Houston in the House, who had been concerned that you don't want to have too many of these Amber Alerts that go out. People may stop paying attention to them if there are too many of them or too many are unfounded. But apparently, the language in this law, as it's been put together now, has taken care of any concerns anyone had on that front. So what's going to happen now is going to the governor's office. He is expected to sign this into law soon. What this measure does, this Hailey's Law, it broadens the definition of a missing child for alert eligibility. What it does is it adds something called a high-risk missing person into the definition for using the missing child alert. So you can have an Amber Alert now where perhaps it did not meet the criteria before. And on top of that, it extends the Silver Alert system, which is for older folks, to actually go to some missing children situations. What it does, bottom line, the reason for it, is to give law enforcement more discretion, and they can act more quickly when something is brought to their attention that there could be a high-risk case. We don't know if this would have helped Hailey Buzzbee at all, but we know her family feels strongly about this legislation, so they certainly were pushing this, and I'm very happy to see that they felt so strongly about it. They feel it's good law, and if a unanimous vote by both houses of the legislature tells you anything, people around the state of Indiana think this is a good law. It's what will be going into effect soon once the governor signs it and the effective date passes. There's one other law that may have an impact that I think people need to know about, particularly when it comes to education. Indiana lawmakers have now passed a law that essentially bans, in most cases, bans cell phones from schools during the school day. What this law says is if a student has a cell phone, you either have to leave it at home, or if it's brought to school, it has to be put away someplace at the school, powered off, and inaccessible the entire school day. So no more classroom projects with cell phones. This doesn't even have an exception for that. Now, there are some exceptions. Medical needs would be one. The need for translation is another. Some special education exceptions. They also talk about emergencies, and I'm not sure what the details are in that, but there is an emergency provision in this law. Well, one other one, which I'm curious to know how that will work out in the end. Audio recording for note taking. So you're recording the audio of a lecture or a class so you can take notes later. Apparently, that's going to be an exception, but how that's going to work, I don't know. So what I did is I decided to go back and take a look at the policies of our local school system here in the Fishers area, the Hamilton Southeastern Schools. What is their current policy on cell phones? Their current policy, in case you're wondering, let's start at the high school level. And they have them for high school and junior high. They're almost the same. What the policy says is that cell phones, smartwatches, AirPods, headphones are not to be used by students in the classroom, must be silenced unless a teacher, a substitute, or an administrator explicitly allows otherwise. So if you can use it in the classroom, essentially. So you're allowed to have your cell phone under HSE's policy. It has to be powered down while you're in the classroom, except for there's some exceptions. And a lot of those exceptions are the same as what you'd find in the state law that's passed both houses. The junior high has about the same policy at HSE schools. So that will mean school systems such as HSE and others around the state will have to change their policies once this law comes into effect. So once again, the cell phones where you could carry them around, use them in a classroom with the teacher's permission, it's not going to happen. In most cases, except those few exceptions I mentioned, students are going to have to keep the cell phone at home or store it away at the school and pick it up at the end of the school day. This was a controversial law. Not everybody was in favor of it. A lot of parents would like for their students to have the smartphone or the cell phone with them, just in case there is some kind of an emergency that's going on that was unforeseen. But looks like that's the law that's going to go into effect. So thought those two items coming from our state lawmakers had some importance to our daily lives. My guest on this podcast is John Wexler. John is the CEO of the Fishers-based company. That Fishers-based company is called Spoke Note. Today's episode of Larry in Fishers is brought to you by Citizens State Bank. For over 150 years, Citizens State Bank has been committed to the communities they're rooted in, providing more than just banking services and products, but a true community partner dedicated to giving back and supporting our community's growth. How? By making sure you and your local business owners have the products, tools, and expertise you need to thrive. In addition to everyday checking and savings accounts, Citizens State Bank offers a selection of business and personal financing products, plus a team of local experienced lenders who are as invested in your success as you are and committed to helping you secure the right financing for your needs. Skip the call centers and hold music and get the friendly hometown service you deserve, the modern digital banking tools you expect, and relationships that grow with you, whether you're running a business or managing everyday finances. You can visit Citizens State Bank's Fishers branch inside the Thomas A. Weaver Municipal Complex at 9 Municipal Drive, Suite 5, or learn about it more online. mycsbin.com/Larry. That's mycsbin.com/Larry. Thanks to Citizens State Bank, member FDIC and equal housing lender, for supporting local news and the Fishers community. John Wexler is best known, I think, as founder of Launch Fishers, along with the then town manager of Fishers, Scott Fadness, now the mayor. He is still with Launch Fishers as a member of its board of directors, but we're here to talk to John about his role as founder and CEO of the company Spoke Note. So, John, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining me today.
Larry, thank you for having me.
I want to talk about Spoke Note and what you're doing now, because where you started, now where you are, because you're into something called dynamic video. You're calling this a fundamental shift in how organizations are communicating. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, thank you again for engaging me on this topic. It's near and dear to my heart, obviously, with Spoke Note. What we talk about when we talk about this fundamental shift in dynamic video is authentic communication. In this age of AI, there is no shortage of ways to create communication for customers, for employees, for stakeholders, for constituents, any number of ways to communicate with them. But we think that authenticity will start to really take a premium with the advent of fake videos and computer generated content, let's call it. And so what we've done is we've created what we think of as movable type for video. So if you think about it, when we used to do printing, before the advent of movable and modular type, you would just create one impression of something. You would run ink over a lead or a wood mold or a plate, and you would create that impression, and then everybody got the same thing. That's kind of the way video is done today, where you make a corporate video and then you send it to everyone. What we're saying now is instead of doing it in a single monolithic structure, let's break it down to its components and then let our software stitch together the videos based on what the end user wants to see. So, in other words, let's say that you were a nonprofit and you were raising money for your organization. If you have a new donor, you're going to speak to them differently than you would maybe a lapsed donor, and maybe different than someone that's a legacy or long-term donor. Those are three completely different messages. Yet today we still kind of treat everybody as one size fits all when it comes to video, and that's what we're trying to change.
Yeah, because in the past, as you well know, email marketing, these mass video platforms you referred to, they were the way people communicated. So what you're describing is a very different concept.
It's also really drawing to the parallels with you mentioned email marketing. If you remember back in the day when email marketing started, it was magical just to get a mass email to everyone, even if it was the same thing. And if it was just like a brochure, but everybody got the same thing. Then you started to see, oh, wait, this says Dear John, this says Dear Larry, and the idea of like a Microsoft Merge document where you could begin to put variables in it, that started happening. Today, there are national consumer brands, when they send an email out, they may send north of 1 million unique combinations of the same email to people, but it's all based on what your interests are. So we've perfected it with movable type, right, in an email. But I think we're just at the early stages of how this is going to change with video, and that's what we've introduced with dynamic video.
So for an organization, let's say like a nonprofit, you mentioned those, but also pro sports teams, they're obviously on your client list. Just how powerful can this be? Because you're talking about personalization at scale, which is a new concept.
It is, and it is what we think of as a kind of a blue ocean or evergreen space. We're creating this category, and there's a whole lot of research and data to back up that those that create brand new categories and go on to define that category really can secure a leadership position. And so, we think that it's a fundamental shift in thinking about how you communicate with people. And so, when you think about the different personas of your customers or go all the way down to the individual level to communicate with them. If everybody were to get a video that said, "Hey, John, I want to thank you for your blah, blah, blah. Hey, Larry, I want to thank," instead of a generic video, there is a lot of evidence that says personalization increases attention span and focus and likelihood of recall. When you engage not only with personalization, but with multiple modes to the brain, video, audio, data, pictures, music. When you engage at that level, you significantly increase the likelihood that someone will A, remember that message, but B, take action based on what you're sharing with them. We all drive off of emotion, and this is a great emotional hook.
Yeah, and let's take a look at a real world example because one of your clients Indie Ignite. Now they're doing something right because they're drawing great crowds. They're putting a good, well, of course, putting a good product on the court too. They're leading the league at the moment as we speak, I
Yep.
believe.
Yep.
Talk about how this dynamic video has changed their whole view of engagement and the results they're getting.
Yeah, so we are in the early stages. Let's keep in mind dynamic video was just announced really here this year. We've just started this. And so we're in the early stages. They have embraced Spoke Note though from the very beginning, and they completely understand not only the value proposition of personalizing video messaging, but they are embracing dynamic video. And I think you're going to see in the coming months some really incredible use cases. If you think of their constituents alone, let's talk about their stakeholders. You've got ticket holders, you have season ticket holders, you have sponsors, you have corporate partners. You've got, there's a whole host in the community here of people they would speak to. With dynamic video, now they can take the core of their super exciting, imagery and the videos of spiking and ace serves and all the excitement of an Ignite match, and then they can layer in personalized or thematic audio and video based on the audience that's receiving that video, and that's what we're enabling with dynamic video.
And I think that it's getting easier with technology. You talk about artificial intelligence. I mean, editing video is something I've done. Now, how painstaking that could be. AI has made this much easier.
Absolutely. And one of the things really that our software does is we allow you to add transitions in between video clips. So one other use case that we're seeing a lot of interest in is what we call sales enablement. So in an environment where you have a sales rep that is selling something to a base of customers, you can now take a corporately produced video, like an introductory video on a new product launch, and you can introduce yourself on the video. Me, hi Larry, I'm John. I wanted to send you this video on the product we talked about. Then that plays, and then you add another video that's a closing thank you for watching the video with a call to action. And then you can add a button below the video that says click here to schedule the demonstration so I can show you how this would work in your environment. Or click here to text me right now to let me know your feedback. Or you think about marrying up that digital experience with a call to action, and it's just next level in terms of results that we are seeing ourselves and what we think our customers will ultimately see with dynamic video.
As I understand it, John, your company has multiple patent applications pending. You're pursuing integrations with a company like Salesforce, which has a large presence in downtown Indianapolis, HubSpot, and some others. So talk about how important it is for your company to be embedded inside systems like that to enterprise clients that have certainly shown success in the past.
Absolutely. You're hitting the nail on the head. And the reason it's so important is that we are asking the world to put us into their workflow, not inviting the world to join our workflow, right? One of the hardest things with new technology is you come into somebody's environment, their work environment, and say, now all you need to do is use this app to do this and this app to do that. And all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, we're a Salesforce shop. We want to do everything in Salesforce. So what we are doing is giving the Salesforce user the ability to integrate this round trip, all of it, with Salesforce. So you don't have to change the way you send a message. You use the same email provider you use, the same text message provider you use, or the same postal setup with your printer to send QR codes via direct mail. All of that can be used to trigger Spoke Notes dynamic video. So we felt it was critical to integrate into the workflow of our customers, not ask them to come out of it to join us in ours.
Let me talk about QR codes because Spoke Note is originally noted for that. Anybody who's a Pacer fan, well, you got on that Pacer bandwagon last season, when they
Right there
made
behind me.
the NBA Finals. Yeah, you can see, if you're looking on video, you can see behind him, we got the number 33 Pacer jersey right there behind him. But that I think a lot of people are first exposed to Spoke Note by that fact that you have the QR codes on the jerseys. You were clearly right there with the Pacers as they had that season last. That thing's been tougher this year, but last season certainly was a banner year for them, the way the team performed, and you were certainly a part of the whole thing. Now, explain how you've pivoted from that QR code video sticker phase of your business to where you're going now.
Well, you're right on it. I mean, you're all you did your reading, or somehow you're using our language, because the pivot really is what that's all about. I mean, if you remember, this is what we were known for when we launched. We had these, basically $10 sticker packs that you could buy on. You can still buy them on Amazon, and inside of this are 10 stickers that you think of as the digital equivalent of a Post-it note. So instead of grabbing a Sharpie and writing a note, you simply scan the code, leave a video. Wherever that sticker goes, the video plays. Pretty simple, pretty clever. But along the way to doing that, business and industry found other uses for our software, which was integrated into their direct mail efforts, consumer marketing, et cetera. And we started doing that, which led us ultimately to this idea of dynamic video. And that is absolutely the future of the company. And so, we think it's an important part of our history. The legacy of the company is that sticker and the QR code. But the reality is, when you look at how we are changing the game for large corporations, for universities, and large nonprofits, it's just a night and day different business from what it was when we started 5 years ago.
Speaking of the future of your company, you've talked about raising a Series A round that could push your total capital raise past $10 million. That's quite a number. So I guess the question I would ask, to the extent that you're able to talk about this at this point, what milestones do you need to hit uh, over next year, whether you're talking about customers, hiring, or product rollout types of things? We're in a capitalist economy. You need to prove yourself. How do you prove the dynamic video is actually delivering on its promise?
Well, again, right, the key metric there is revenue, like bookings. And so now we are at the point where we're beyond the early stage venture. I call it the pixie dust phase, where my job as the CEO is to throw the pixie dust in the air and let the sparkles capture everyone's imagination. We've done that. And we're really thankful to have the confidence of our investor base and those that have continued to put capital in the business. That's allowed us to get to this point. Now we are at the point where we are out talking to the world about dynamic video, and the number of deals and the revenue that we book that will directly dictate really what the enterprise value is. And that's how all companies like this are ultimately measured. And if we hit our targets and we hit our goals, we are very confident that the capital base that we need will continue and ultimately becomes an organically fundable enterprise at that point. So the idea is that, think of it this way. Think of software as if the analogy here, we're building a bridge over the Ohio River, okay? And I can't get the bridge built halfway and then explain. So it's like that, but then the cars are going to go the rest of the way. It just doesn't work that way, right? People would need to get all the way across to see the proof that that's actually happening. So as we stand here today, our bridge is built over the Ohio River. Now we need to stream a second car. We've already done one as the proof of concept. And let's say that it cost us X million to do that. The second car that goes over, my cost is now half of X, right? The next two, I'm at a quarter of X. So if it was 10 million to build the bridge, the first car cost me 10 million. The second car, I'm at an average of 5. The next one, I'm at an average of 2.5 million. When I'm streaming 10,000 cars a day, it's unit level profitable, but I could never have done that without the investment capital to build the bridge in the first place. That's the whole idea of how venture-backed companies are actually built.
When you use your bridge analogy, I had to think of Andrew Carnegie when he built that bridge over the Mississippi River at St. Louis, and he made a big splash walking an elephant over that bridge to prove to people that the steel would hold it. So yeah, you've got to prove yourself, and sometimes you have to do it in a big splashy way. Just want
Love
to point out that John's company, Spoke Note, is a Fisher's company. If you've ever been at 4-Day Ray in downtown Fishers, his office is right above 4-Day Ray. So John, appreciate you talking. Any thoughts, final thoughts about Spoke Note, where you're going, dynamic video? Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, we're just really proud to be right here in Fishers. It's been amazing to see what's going on in our community with the emergence not only of our entrepreneurial community, but then the emergence of life sciences, now the introduction of the event center. You look at the F1 team. If you had asked me 10 years ago to lay odds on Fishers having an F1 team, I'm pretty sure I would have lost every available penny that I could have put on something like that. But the idea that we now have a team that is going to be debuting here shortly at the Australian Grand Prix and Formula One that's based 2 miles from us here is just almost unimaginable a decade ago. But it's been fun. I really appreciate all that you do in your storytelling and the importance of local news. It just cannot be understated what you do and others like you that really lean in to tell the stories locally, because that is a critical part, I think, of our infrastructure for media. And I love what you do. So thank you for doing it.
Well, thank you, John. And I'll have to echo something you said as a lifelong racing fan. The idea that I'd be this close to a Formula One team and the fact that the Cadillac engine, they're using Ferrari engines because it takes 2 years to develop a Formula One engine. That
Mhm.
engine that will eventually power the Cadillac team a couple of years from now in Formula One, that's going to be designed and built right here in Fishers, something I never could have imagined. But yeah, I
Truly
think
amazing.
people in Fishers are I've yet to see the international attention we're going to get with that. But John, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for the kind words and best of luck to you with you and Spoke Note.
Thank you very much, Larry. Take care.
One other item from the General Assembly. The lawmakers in the State House have passed, and the governor has already signed. He didn't waste no time on this one, providing the funding mechanism to build a Chicago Bears stadium in Hammond, Indiana. Now, it should be noted, Illinois legislators are working on their own package for a stadium in Illinois. As always, where the Bears will go, they're going to go wherever the money is best for them. That's the way all professional sports franchises work, particularly the NFL. I would say that you have to consider something else. Even though the stadium would be built in Hammond, the other Chicago Bear facilities, like the headquarters, practice field, will still be in the Chicago area, will not be in Indiana. It would just be the stadium that would be located in Indiana. So, however this works out in the end, I just hope Indiana is not left holding the bag here. If I was a wagering on this, I would have to say Illinois has the inside track. But if Illinois drops the ball, Indiana could come through. The funding mechanism is there, and apparently the Bears are okay with that as they await the deal that Illinois will offer them. Finally, on this podcast, news story from Ohio. A man living in Ohio said a special algorithm created by his wife's grandmother led to his prayers being answered and a $25,208.50 lottery prize. Now, this Columbus man told the Ohio lottery officials that he and his wife play lottery games regularly, and they use a special algorithm invented by his wife's grandmother when they buy the tickets. He said the couple had recently been praying for lottery luck to support their Youth Mind Builders. It's a nonprofit they founded, and it teaches financial literacy for young people. So the player used his grandmother-in-law's system when he bought his ticket for the February 15th evening Pick 5 drawing. He bought it at Briggs Stock Mart in Briggs Road, Columbus, Ohio. And that ticket scored a $25,000 jackpot. It matched all five numbers, 6, 8, 2, 5, and 7, as well as an additional $208.50 from a 120-way box bet. I don't know about you. The United Press International story did not detail what the grandmother-in-law's algorithm was, but I suspect lots of people would like to know. It's my podcast for today, so thank you for watching and listening. And once again, thanks to Citizens State Bank for sponsoring this episode of Fridays with Larry. Learn more about their business and personal banking options at mycsbin.com/Larry. Or stop by their Fishers branch at the Thomas A. Weaver Municipal Complex. Thanks again to Citizens State Bank, member FDIC and equal housing lender, for supporting local journalism in Fishers.